tax rate public hearing. Joe, take it away.
I will certainly turn on about taxes for a minute. Let me just read off of the memo that I provided to council and the mayor. Really simply, as you remember, the 2021 adopted tax rate was actually $3.97 per thousand. With the increases in assessments, the proposed tax rate for 2022 is $3.37 per thousand. And as required by the state of Kentucky, we calculated the compensating rate, which guarantees us the same amount as last year in revenue. That rate is actually $3.25 per thousand. Right now, that $3.37 actually represents a 15% decrease in the property tax rate. I went through my numbers, and it looks like the last time the city's rate was that low was about 2010. I think we were $3.34 per thousand. So it's been quite some time since the rate was that low. That 2010 was actually a reassessment year as well, so that does make sense. That proposed tax rate actually provides approximately $220,000 in additional revenue over that compensating rate for this year. I think our budget number was actually $230,000 if I'm not mistaken, but 220, 225 is always a good rule of thumb for what that brings in. So with that, if there are any questions,
What was the,
Please come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
can turn it on to you, Jeff, if you press the button.
Jeff Ferris, 66 Bernie, I just have one question, sort of it's two. What was the taxes collected last year?
The taxes collected last year?
Yes, please.
Oh, I've got mine. I don't have the actual final number because we don't have the audited number at this point. There's a little bit of accruals to be done there. The budgeted amount actually ended up being, it was about, there's my number. It was about 5.75 million was that budget number last year, and we did come in pretty close to that. So that's a good, about 5.75 million.
And what will it be?
Budgeted number this year, despite what that says, is 5.98 million, so we're at almost $6 million.
Okay, and that's, I know, I don't get confused with rate of revenue because I've studied it for the last, 20 years plus. But it troubles me when they go, well, we're lowering it. Yes, the rate is being lowered.
Well, yeah.
And back to your point about in 2010, it being as low as 3.34, it's up because our values are,
Oh, no.
which
no.
are not in your hands, I totally accept that. But as the values go up,
Right.
if we
Right.
were still up at the highest number we've been, at what the values are now,
Yeah, the valuation
Yeah.
actually went up across the board about 23%.
I thought it was 27 or 23.
Yeah, 23 I think is what they
You
find.
know what, I think I heard 27, but that was before appeals.
Correct,
Because
correct.
I talked with the PPA guy.
Yeah, the last I looked at it was 23. I think the school board, when they sent their numbers to the Kentucky Department of Education, it ended up being about 23, so.
Great information, I appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem.
Joe, is that 23% number, that's a city-owned, you don't know what the county-wide.
No, I don't know what the county-wide is. That's just the school, that's just the city of Fort Thomas. The city and the schools effectively.
Right.
But the schools are different.
Just a little bit. I mean, with the notable exception of Villa Grande, the area is fairly similar, and it's kind of an average across the board. I think the school was really close to us in the end. I have all of the specific numbers, the actual final assessment numbers for everything on my desk. I can look at them if you'd like.
So it's only because I talked with the PPA, they said you want the city numbers or the school numbers at the time I was asking. So I figured it was.
They are different. They are different, but not by that much across the board, across the entire city. They're not that much different.
Anybody else like to address the tax rate?
Hi, I'm Dennis Montpellier, 40 County Lane, Fort Thomas. Joe, someone told me, and here again, say, the tax, I don't know if it's a tax rate, something about 4%. Is the city limited to accumulating 4% more revenue?
Correct, correct. The state actually limits the amount of additional revenue we can bring in at 4%, which is
Citywide, okay,
Across the
so my tax liability for my house did go up 30%, but someone's gonna be a little lower, someone's gonna be a lot higher, but on the
Correct.
overall, it's 4%.
that's correct. And it's really only based on the revenue the previous year. That's all we're allowed to bring in it's about $225,000, about 2.25 more. And that's regardless of what the assessments do, we can bring the same amount. If they go up, it's the same amount. If they go down, it's the same amount.
So basically, my argument would have to be with the PPA as far as the assessed value of my house, more so than the rate.
I would say, unfortunately, yes, your argument would have to be with the people.
Joe, can you explain how much that 4% is per average household?
For average household,
Or average, like say 100.
realistically, if you look at what our average house in Fort Thomas is probably around, and I can give you a good ballpark right now. We may be pushing $300,000, quite frankly. The average, what our tax rate looks like on a $300,000 home right now, if you figure 300 grand at $3.37 per thousand, it's about $1,000, $1,011.
That's $1,000 more, you're saying?
No, that's the current rate. So $3.37, the proposed rate on that $300,000 home is about $1,000. So the difference between that and the compensating rate, obviously, it would be $3.25 versus $3.37 times that $300,000. So realistically, probably about $35. The difference in property taxes between the compensating rate and the proposed rate is about $35, $40 on the average home in Fort Thomas. Is what that ends up being.
I got it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sharon McKnight, 62 Miller Lane. I don't understand a word you just said, Joe.
Oh,
Could you explain that to
Adam
me
was just
again?
simply asking what the difference was between, say, the compensated rate,
Okay,
the compensating rate, which is the rate which guarantees us the same amount of property taxes as last year that the state allows us to have, and then the compensating rate plus 4%, which would be the $3.37 per thousand rate that we're adopting. The difference on a $300,000 home between those two rates is realistically about $36.
So when you hear us talk about raising max of 4%, right?
yes.
Correct.
So when I was trying to explain that to you before and stuff, Joe is the man with his numbers, so just so you get an average rate of what we do when we raise it 4%, it's about $35 for every $300,000 house. So I just wanted to know what we do as a city is what we recommend.
Right.
I was just a little confused about the first amount, the $1,000 you said.
A $300,000 home.
Yes.
So a $300,000 home at $3.37 per thousand pays it's $1,011
Yes.
to the city of Fort Thomas. That doesn't include the school office.
So Joe, I just sort of calculated, so if it's 300,000 this year, that is, last year's values would have been 77% of that number, right? 23% lower.
Give or take, yes.
Right. So that's 231,000. So if you use those averages, the average value of the house went from 231,000 to 300,000 now. Your taxes, you multiply that out over 8 times new rate, were about $920. So I think he answered that question. For that type of person, it went up about $80.
Yeah, if you assume that person saw the average assessment increase of about 23-25% with the current tax rate, that would be correct. You're at about $80 more on what would be the average house in Fort Thomas, assuming that person saw the average.
That's a combination of the new assessment and
tax
Correct.
rate, not one or the other.
Correct. That would be a
The
combination.
bulk of it being coming from the new assessment.
Right.
Yeah, by the way, those assessed values, it's interesting. The Kentucky Constitution requires that property be assessed at its full value. And that's in the Constitution. I always wonder, well, what was going on back then that they needed to put that in the Constitution? We don't have a choice over that. All we can do is set the rate again within the limits.
All right, any other comments for the tax rate?
Did that kind of explain everything to you guys? Is there any more questions? I know it's a little confusing.
And if you think of any other questions,
Feel
free to give me a shout.
Joe was kind enough to talk to me on Thursday. I was just wondering, if you get a $300,000 house that came from 200,000 to 300,000, how much more are they paying out of the house?
again, about $80.
$80 on the tax.
Correct. Yeah, and that obviously doesn't include the school taxes. The school taxes are pretty. The school taxes are obviously the lion's share of the tax bills you get every year.
Yeah.
They also dropped, so our rates, because of this, went down about 15%. The schools were actually 14 and change percent, so their rates dropped a similar amount.
And you're saying the $80 is including the county and the city, I mean the school?
No.
No,
City taxes. The only thing that we can control.
is the city tax, so $80 on that.
It's a little confusing because the rate dropped per thousand, but the thousands went up.
Yeah.
So with the thousands going up, that means you pay more out of pocket even though the rates have dropped.
If you didn't get reassessed, you're gonna have your taxes drop significantly.
Yeah.
And they made it very clear that very few people did that. I mean, you're right, but that was the great exception to
You're
Sharon.
looking at about $25 per $100,000 house.
Hers went up 57%.
Which
Those
I
are the
I
ones
did,
that-
yeah, I had to go to the field after I was first, although I didn't appeal, but I got the right people to write the field, and they did bring it down, so it did still go up, but that's a huge jump.
That's a huge one.
All right, thank you all very much. We'll close the public hearing for the tax rate and we will open our regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Becker? Mr. Beazle?
Here.
Mr. Blau?
Here.
Mr. Peter?
Here.
Let's do it. Pledge the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of our August 15th meeting.
It's gonna be really confusing for the rest of us.
One second. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, we are down to visitors and communications. If anybody would like to address council on any other topic, please step forward with your name and address and let us know what you'd like to discuss.
Jim Fair, 66 Burning Lane. I doubt if this can be addressed here tonight, but I'm hoping you can at least tell me to whom I could speak to. I've been in several different groups, or in the company of several different groups of people, and these IRB bonds, industrial revenue bonds, keep coming up and they keep being explained differently. And I would like to speak with someone who they have very strong confidence that he knows exactly what he was saying and was explaining it differently than anyone else did. I guess, without naming names, because I don't want to, but I wonder if everyone on council, when they vote for these IRBs, are voting for, this is based on when these condos sell for this, rather than if these condos sell for this. Because my understanding is that if the condos, the ones at One Highland, were estimated to sell for a certain amount, I'll make a flat number of 1 million, and they sold for 700, the IRB bond doesn't get reimbursed for that, doesn't bring in the revenue that they thought it was going to. So what I'm hoping is that I can have some council members explain it to me. If it can't be tonight, I would be glad to meet one-on-one. But was it proposed as when they sell for these estimates? Or were they, when y'all voted on them, voted to accept these IRBs, or I don't know if it's accepts the word, was it based on when they sell for this amount of money, or if they sell for this amount of money? Because that's a huge amount. Yeah, you can put a property, you can put a price on any of your houses you want to sell, and you can't go to the bank saying, hey, I'm going to go on this trip for this much money because my house is for sale for that, until your house sells for that. So can anybody ask if it was when they sell for this versus if they sell for this?
I can answer your question.
Pardon me, could I?
Yeah, no problem.
That's my profession.
No, I understand, which is why I want to see people that aren't in the profession, because it was someone in the profession who explained it. But I want to know if the council members understand it.
Well, this is what we were just talking about, it depends on assessed values. And those assessments can't be set. I mean, that's a future event that's gonna happen every whatever. I mean, it's, you know, in theory, can be. So, you know, the rate that is paid will be based on the assessment. Now, those properties are exempt from taxation under the bond structure. They're exempt. Okay, so in one sense, it doesn't apply. I don't remember what the exact agreement was. But,
Does someone remember?
excuse me?
Does someone remember what the exact agreement was?
Well, when you do the IRBs.
Well, yeah, let me finish the explanation first, and then you can think of the numbers that you want, or we can, you know, get or whatever. So, the property is exempt from taxation. However, quite often, there are payments that are made under the agreement for providing the bonds that will make the property tax exempt. There's an agreement that in lieu of payment will be made. Payment in lieu of taxes. Okay. That's what I don't remember as to what the exact agreement was. But that, you know, there's an agreement that would lay out, but you don't know the exact amounts because you don't know what the assessed values will be over time. Like I just said, the Kentucky Constitution requires it be assessed at the 100% of value. You can't agree to another value. Now, rates are universal. This tax rate that we're going to consider tonight is for the whole city.
I'm not
Yeah,
talking about
right.
that.
But the assessed value can't be determined. And also what that means in total numbers can't be determined because you don't know what the assessment's going to be. But there's estimates that you make based on what you think might happen. That's how it works. But the thing is, the property is exempt from taxation.
But somehow we're supposed to be getting some income from these bonds, is that correct?
The payment in lieu of taxes, that's what's supposed to be received. Again, I don't remember the details of that agreement right now, or I have obviously in front.
Was that, when we did that, were we getting the tax base, we were still getting the taxes based on the property that was previously there?
It was more than that, yes. And over the 20-year life of the bond, or 25, I don't know if it's a 20-year bond or 25-year bond, it was paying back all our investment in the property.
Right. And that is my record. I mean, it's at sort of that level,
And what is our investment at this point?
1.6 million. And
Well, but the bonds are 22 million, right?
Yes.
that's right, but in a sense, that means the only thing that means, because the city isn't liable on those bonds, the only thing that means is there's $22 million of property that's exempt from taxation. That's all that means.
That means a lot.
Well, no, but I'm saying it doesn't have anything to do with the city's obligation of making payments. Our payments are on the money that was borrowed for the parking. It was for the parking structure. And so, calculation was made at that time that, and so we borrowed money over that period.
Did we borrow
The 1.6 million. But the projected revenues that we were still going to get under the payment in lieu of tax payments was more than enough to pay the debt service on those bonds. So in other words, the new taxes generated by that facility that were payable to us, you know, again, it's a little bit nuanced because it's payment in lieu of taxes, not actual taxes, was enough to cover our costs and our financing costs of providing that parking. So we get, I don't want to say we get the benefit for nothing, but I mean, the theory is, if we didn't do that, then it doesn't get built. Then there's no new tax revenue, no tax revenue at all, and then you have nothing. So that's sort of the thought process that goes on.
The schools were not left out of the pilot program either.
Right.
They were included.
That's,
Correct.
And the
I-
schools did not have their rate adjusted for the state because it's not on the tax.
Yes, so that's even a more nuanced benefit to the schools.
Yeah, it's big, it's bigger benefit.
It is a big benefit, but it's very difficult to understand.
Basically, we get a parking lot out of it, it gets paid for. Since we borrowed the money at a rate less than what the bonds are paying to the city and the paying in lieu of taxes, it's a wash.
but are we currently getting any of that pilot money?
Yeah, payments
Or,
are.
like, who's paying it? Because there's,
Developer.
I'd also like to say that even though that if we didn't buy the parking lot, we'd still get $2 million. So either way, it's just paying us $1.6+ million back. So regardless, the parking lot it's nice to say that it pays for the parking lot, but regardless, we hadn't given them any money, we would just take $2 million.
No, I would suggest that the development would not have happened, there would have been.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
If they,
I'm not saying that, it wouldn't have happened, but that's,
if they were developed with dollars.
Yes. And that's always
That's
a
maybe.
game play, but I can tell you, I was on council at that time, and I looked at those numbers. And those developers are, took big risks to make this kind of investment in the city. So I really don't think, I mean, I'm pretty convinced in my mind, and I've seen these deals all over the state. They would not have done this without the parking, which cities always typically do, is provide parking for downtown development. That's very common economic development incentive that's used by cities.
so I want to just confirm something that, the mayor just said. Are you saying that Rick Bradley is paying this pilot?
I don't know personally who is paying the pilot.
Is he the
How that
developer?
works out. I just know that the city gets the payment in lieu of taxes.
And it's based on the assessed value, so
No, but
John.
it's assessed at a certain value. Now,
Hey,
understand,
Aaron, I can tell you for the first 4 years of the agreement, the developer paid the actual bond payments of $333,000, and they paid the additional pilot payments to the city, the schools, and the county. Was that not? I believe that was the original. It was the
Was that
first
3
X
years?
amount of years. It was based on a lower rate. After that, it adjusted to the assessed value of the individual condos, which is probably $18 million for the residential condos and possibly more when you factor in the retail ones.
yeah, Joe, the only thing I would say is that may not be true for this year.
Correct.
Because January 1 is the assessment date.
Right.
So whatever the value of the property is on January 1, and that property was still under construction on January 1, so it was not at its full value.
Yeah.
It will be this January.
how many have to sell before it gets to the real value?
No,
I
somebody
think
owns
that's
it. Somebody already owns it. It's already
what-
in
Somebody
there.
owns one.
No,
No,
the developers
owns
own
all.
the rest. I mean, somebody has to own the property,
I
right?
thought the city owned it.
No. Well, legally, the city has
Legally, it's not
title
gonna
to the
talk.
property.
Yeah.
But for tax purposes, under this
They're not
agreement,
paying.
it's essentially owned by the developer. At the end of the bond issue, the developer will get the property. And so, for all intents and purposes, federal tax law, the developer owns the property and has to pay these payment in lieu of taxes to the city until they sell them. When they sell them, then the owner essentially ends up.
I believe one of the residential units is, so that's what I saw on the PVA.
But of course, remember, everything's as of January 1. So
And that's
they
sold
weren't
in
the owner
July.
January 1.
No, they weren't.
That's why when you settle on a house, you split the taxes for the year because you're not
Right.
trading it on January 1. All those things are factors.
Understandable.
And so by January 1, it'll be assessed at,
What they pay.
well, there'll be a reassessment because now the project's complete. And yeah, I guess that's right. I mean, not January 1, it wasn't complete last January. This coming January 1, it'll be done, so
That's just their condo though, right? The one that's sold?
No, the whole development is done, somebody owns that, they have to pay the taxes on it.
So until each unit sells, you're saying the developer owns it,
Yes,
but the city has title to it.
that's legal title for property tax purposes, for every other incidence of ownership. Now the developer owns it, when they quote sell it, then the individual condo owner will own
That would be what I would assume.
it. Yeah, so, I mean, it's just like auto dealers, they pay inventory tax on the automobiles in their lot, you know? That's why they have these year-end sales, when you get rid of the automobiles, they don't have to pay property tax on all those autos. This would be the same thing. They would like to sell them, obviously, and so then the individual owners have to pay the taxes and the developer doesn't have to pay them anymore.
In the,
I tell you what,
Yeah.
this is a great discussion, but why don't you guys meet offline and talk more about it? I appreciate you getting information about this because it is very difficult to understand. It's a very beneficial deal for the city and for the schools. And if you have further questions about it, Roger's a great person. He understands this better than anybody else on council. So if you wouldn't mind doing that offline so we can move ahead with our meeting.
I do have one other closing comment, and some of this discussion that I've witnessed have come from, and I hate to bring up something that's gonna be probably rude, but you said if it didn't go like this, we never would have done it, and that's what people are asking, why did you do it? So we wish you wouldn't have done it. I mean, universally, it's not a well-received development. I'm just a messenger, so don't shoot me, but if it hadn't been set up this way, it wouldn't have happened. The next thing people say is, then it shouldn't have happened.
It's the same kind of thing that happens with these homes back here. Basically, it's the exact same kind of deal, same thing. Those would not have been redone if it wasn't for the IRB. So, and I actually think that's a pretty good deal back there, and it's been beneficial to the city, so.
I don't know how it is, because I don't know, because I can't find anything out about those homes. Like even who owns them, but I'm just saying, to your point, it's a good deal, it's a good thing for you because it wouldn't have happened without that. For the people who wish it hadn't happened, it's not as good of a deal. So,
No, I understand. Anybody else like to address council? Yes.
I just had a follow-up question, and since, just one question. Can you tell us why it was tax exempt? Are all industrial revenue bonds tax exempt?
The answer to that is no, but there are very specific provisions in the statute that if it's done a certain way, the property will then be tax exempt. That's in the statutes. The property tax statutes and the bonds.
What's the benefit to the community to have it tax exempt? Can you, I don't mean, but if you could explain that.
Well, it's like Joe just said, it's to encourage development.
Okay, so
I don't
it's not
disagree.
encouraged,
Yeah.
it wasn't anything to help put more money back in our pocket, the community, but to encourage the development of one market.
No, both.
No, I mean,
It does both things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Roger, if I could ask a question, Mike answered.
okay, thank you.
The properties that were there were being taxed at whatever
Exactly.
values, correct? And now in 20 years, when the IRBs are.
30 years.
We're going to be, the properties will be taxed at a substantially higher value, is that right?
That's right, and so when those bonds are gone, then it's full taxation. But in addition to that, as far as city revenue, and this is true of cities in Kentucky generally, as Joe was just saying, we don't get much revenue from property. Our revenue really comes from employment tax. And so that generates, there's also an insurance premium tax. All those businesses are insured, the individuals living. So, you know, there are other tax values generated by that property for the city, but I don't know that that was what was done. It was based on listening to what the vision plan said and what we heard people say, and that they wanted that type of development in town.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't one of them, but
Well,
thank you.
not
I would
everybody
like
is.
to talk further to Jen about that. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, thank you.
Anyone else like to address council? All right, we'll move down to the reports of boards, committees, and commissions. Public Safety Committee.
Pretty simple, we had a nice public safety, more informative committee meeting prior to council tonight. Chief Evan brought to the attention of the city, and then they brought it to us about the need for a new fire truck, a new ladder truck. Unfortunately, in time these things go bad, and they're not cheap. So it's just, it is what it is, and he put down an extremely justified and clear report as to why we are doing this. He's going to put it all together and explain it simply in our next council meeting in October, so that the public is well aware of what we discussed today. It's a little bit much detail today, so we still got to do a little more research on it. He just wanted to get the information to us and make sure we were on board with the next steps in the process. And it really is going to be a long-term value to the city. So it was just that simple. So.
Great, thank you. And the reports of officers. The administrator's report, go for it.
Thank you, sir. This on. All right, good. The only thing I'd like to bring up, just to let council know that the staff were working on creating an ordinance to put the Grove Grant into an ordinance. We haven't had that yet. It was done in 2018, and we've been continuing it on, but it's never been formalized into an ordinance. So we're working on doing that. So I'll be sending that out once I have Tim take a look at it and put the legalese throughout it. The one change to the Grove Grant we're kind of looking into for this year is to merge in the upfit grant that we were doing along with the COVID money that we had for, I think it was ARPA money, when we had approved that last year. Some of the benefits of the ARPA or the upfit grant, we just want to include in here as other options to allow businesses to apply for them. The funds will still be the tower fund of $60,000 a year, so the money won't change in that. We will clearly lay out in the ordinance the eligible businesses, the aesthetic and structural improvements, what they need to be, and what this does is it lets council make sure, it lets the staff know what you want included, what you want that's not included. So it's just a better guideline for us to operate off of. And then if there's any issues, we'll of course bring it back to council. But it's a good way to kind of ratify what we've been doing already and the process. So.
What is the upfit?
So the upfit was focused, the Grove Grant itself was focused on exterior aesthetics. The upfit was more interior for ADA compliance and other items. So those are things that like I said, I'll add in. Some of the additions would be mechanical, electrical, or plumbing that would bring, HVAC, fire suppressant, things that would bring it up to code. That we have some older buildings. So anything like that would bring it up to current code would be something that we were recommending to be covered. Flooring, lighting, restrooms, any kind of ADA compliance, of course. Anything that's structural that will stay with the building. So
Is that going to go back to committee before it comes to council?
it can if council wants to. Like I
I
said,
think it should, because I think that's changing the parameters of the program, which is exterior grant versus interior building, which actually then becomes, improvements, a lot of improvements for the landlord or the owner of the building, and not necessarily the business owner. So I think it should at least go back to council or a committee for more in-depth discussion.
Unless you want to do it as a committee as a whole, because I agree, there's details about this, and that's exactly why Matt wanted to bring it back to us and say, let's do it in ordinance form, because there's a lot of.
I agree with that 100%. So either way, I think committees are a little cleaner sometimes, but I'm on council the whole too. Either way, whatever you guys feel.
So what committee did it fall in? I mean, this was a
Was it all
motion.
liquor license last time?
Well, they did go to committee.
They did go to committee the first time.
In my,
I don't remember.
I remember, I remember I was personally pretty involved. I don't remember what committee.
Well,
I'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out then, and that's what we'll.
All right, so you want to do this, what's the demand been for the program? Pretty high, I mean,
Yeah,
does this need to get adopted more quickly than it would take to adopt an ordinance?
We were looking to adopt it. Typically, the Grove Grant has been announced next month, but I'm kind of stalling it out with Chandon and Sam because I do want an ordinance before we move to the next phase of this. Just because it was done in 2018 with a different council, I'd like it to be and an ordinance, so it's very clear cut. If anybody asks what was the intent of it, it's all laid out. So that's kind of what we're going for. So I was trying to get it in to have either first reading this month or next month, and then be able to advertise in November.
Oh, we're
But-
first reading, I mean,
But it's a, we
my,
can wait. The goal is we definitely want to award by January 1st. That gives them the entire calendar year to make, so they can start in the spring, that's kind of the timeline goal.
to be honest with you, Matt, my strong recommendation would do it in the municipal ordinance doesn't have any more effect. You still make a public record of it. And it's easier to change it. You make, there may be something that happens in the future, and you say, oh, we need to make an adjustment, we learn something else. Well, then you don't want to wait 2 months or 3 months to do that, to adopt an ordinance, so.
The only issue I have with municipal orders is they're not ratified, or codified, I'm sorry. So they're not a part of American legal. If it's in an ordinance, then any citizens that want to know about the GROW grant, they can just go to American legal, and it's always there. That's my only, I get your point, but that's why we want to write it in a way where it's not something we're going to need to change every year. But that's just how I would prefer it. I'm open to whatever.
I wouldn't have thought that people.
My position's typically been on an ordinance, anything that's ongoing and continual, has been an ordinance, as opposed to more of a one-shot deal, like
If it was an upfit, just a one, if we were only gonna do this for the next 12 months, I think a municipal order is appropriate. But since this has been going on since 2018, that's why I really wanted to put it in an ordinance.
I mean, I still, we changed it a couple of times since it was first adopted, so, the history hasn't been, it's been permanent. I don't know.
We changed the program, we just added 2 more grants. So,
Yeah, well, because of the ordinance. If the
You can
ordinance.
see how that's hard to, it
is
would be hard to
detailed.
track if we have changed it. I don't know how to track that. And if it was
You
an
know,
ordinance,
current-
we would know. You would see the changes, you would
All
see
right.
where it was straight
I'm just
through.
telling you.
I know. I'm okay with,
Rogers meeting.
we can take this committee, if committee wants to do a municipal order,
I think if
that's
the
fine.
committee as a whole, maybe prior to the next meeting, to get it started at least, because it's 2 weeks away, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, go ahead, first reading, because we want that too, we want it to.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we have
Yeah.
the committee as a whole meeting prior to the next meeting? So we can have some discussion about it.
Yeah, I'll have a committee on the
Clarify
19th.
details, and then from there, either have it and have the first reading
Sounds good.
or change it. if we want to do that.
Right.
Actually, if we can get it out ahead of time, so we can review it and maybe offer some feedback.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't have this out, a draft form by next week, and that way, particular lines, it's very easy to, add to or subtract things that are uncomfortable with council, so it'll be pretty easy once we get it set up. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, where are we? We are down to, no old business, no new business, now the ordinances, resolutions, and orders. Yeah, that's fine, thanks. All we have is the tax rate ordinance.
Ordinance number 010/2022, an ordinance providing for the imposition, levy, collection, and enforcement of the taxes of the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, for the year 2022, and fixing the tax rate.
Move approval.
Roll call vote, please.
That's the first reading.
Oh, it's first reading.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. All right, anything else from the council? Motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Anyone want to keep meeting? Nobody wants to keep meeting? Okay, we're out. Thank you all very much.